What happened when mother was diagnosed with autism, and how did you deal with it?
When we went for this assessment, the conversation that I had with this very young therapist, that wasn't done in the right way. She came and she told me, we are noticing certain development delays. He's not engaging with other kids. I feel he is autistic. I was livid because I had no idea what autism was.
I know of another case where a couple's child was autistic, and their parents, their in-laws and their parents were forcing them to have another child. Did you, in any way, were you put in that sort of a situation, by your extended family?
Of course. A lot of them are only having the second child so that the second child can be a support for the first child. I think in India, we do not have health therapists or health counselors. This is a vertical of psychology and counseling that I think needs to be developed. You need to go to a counselor who can tell you, if you know that you have a child with special needs, it is not getting fixed. You're going to manage it. So even these counselors help you set your expectations right. And I think that for a caregiver is very important. People who are caregivers of any kind, until and unless you take care of yourself, you will become a patient yourself.
Hi, I'm Neha, and this is the Lifesaver Show. Firstly, thank you so much for being part of my life-saving community. It means a lot to me that all the podcasts are resonating with so many of you, and I'm getting a lot of feedback, and all in a good way, so it means a lot. My guest today is Mugdha Kalra. She is mum to a special needs child. His name is Madhav, and this is the book she's written, I See You, I Get You. She is an award-winning broadcast journalist and inclusion activist. Apart from being Madhav's mum, she's also the author of the book I just showed you, I See You, I Get You. It is a self-care guide for special needs parents, recognized by the BBC on their 100 Women list of 2021. She runs a neurodiversity awareness, inclusion and advocacy movement called Not That Different. She's passionate about caregiving wellness and is going to tell me today why it is so important to prioritize yourself. Self-love is extremely important. Always remember that. Let's listen in. Hi Mugdha, welcome to the Lifesaver Show. I'm so glad that you could speak to me today.
I'm so happy that you have invited me, Neha. I've been watching the episodes, and it's so inspiring to see people talk about life and health and longevity and everyone around it with such passion. So thank you so much. Apologies in advance if you see my son popping in and popping out because he's back from school. So now he expects that he should have my all attention. So wo aata rahega beech mein.
Thank you so much. And a lot of you don't know, I have worked with Mugdha's husband. He's not only a dear friend, but thoda sa, he's become of sorts of a mentor as well. So we keep having this banter, on WhatsApp. And she is a mum to Madhav, who is autistic. And today I want her to share her story with raising a special needs child. And both her and Gaurav are doing a fantastic job, in trying to sort of achieve that balance at home, work life and personal life. Mugdha, tell me your story. Let's go back a few years, many, many years. I don't know. How old is Madhav now?
He's 15. So
okay,
he's a bit
let's go back about, what, 14? Maybe 13 years?
Yeah.
Anna?
I mean, are you talking about the diagnosis?
Yes. Yes, I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me exactly what happened when mother was diagnosed with autism, and how did you deal with it?
It's always very interesting when I go back to this question because it has meant so many different things at different points in time. From where the awareness bit sort of came out. Initially, when it happened, he was very young. He was about 4.5. We were doing our rounds of school admissions, and that's when we figured that we have to go through a test and an interview, and Madhav was part of those interview sessions. And in one of those interview sessions, and it was for admission in an inclusive school.
Okay.
So when we went there, there were a lot of therapists, and I had no idea that some of the invigilators are likely to be therapists.
Okay.
I wish they had told us, because in retrospect, I'll tell you why it is important and why it was important at that point in time and so relevant even today. So at 4.5, we go for a school assessment, and one of the teachers, after seeing him for about 20 minutes, mingling with other kids and being in that setup, told us that, we need to spend a little extra time for an extra hour of invigilation for them to understand the child better. And this had no red flags at that point in time. I knew Madhav was a late talker, but all his other developmental
I was
milestones
actually just
track on.
coming. I was coming to that. When your pediatrician tells you, or I think when your doctor also tells you to look for these red flags, I was going to just going to ask you, what were the red flags that you had to look out for?
In fact, in our case, unfortunately, except for his delayed milestone in talking, there
Yeah.
weren't any red flags, which is the reason why perhaps we also delayed the intervention by a year or so. Because as the new age parents or semi-woke parents, you're like, बच्चा ठीक है लेट बात कर रहा है, इसका personality trait है, or he doesn't want to, he's not an extrovert like the two of us. That's also
Yeah.
all right. We give a lot of sort of
Yeah.
benefit of doubt.
Yeah.
But when we went for this assessment, I think the way after the assessment, the conversation that I had with this very young therapist, I think that wasn't done in the right way. So as soon as I finished my assessment and, they monitored Madhav, she came and she told me, we are noticing certain development delays. He is not engaging in circle time. He's not engaging with other kids.
Okay.
And he is showing some repetitive actions,
Okay.
because of which I think you may want to consult a assessment center or a doctor. I feel he is autistic.
Okay.
Now that came in 20 minutes of her seeing my child, and I was livid.
Okay.
I was livid because I had no idea what autism was. All I knew was that autism is a neuro disorder.
Okay.
And the imagery in my mind of autism was that of perhaps a severely autistic person. Because in India, we never talk about the autism spectrum disorder.
True.
That is a huge spectrum. At that point in time, I was very upset with this young little therapist. And, I was like, how can she say something like that without even spending enough and more time with my child, without asking me questions? And in hindsight, now I feel like a lot of times when I see young kids in parties, in social gatherings, it takes me 5 minutes to figure out if that child is on spectrum or not.
Yeah.
That's because of years of work, years of monitoring other children, spending a lot of time with the kids on the spectrum.
Yeah.
But at that point in time, what she told me came as a shock. And this is what I tell all the therapists now I work with, because they are our biggest champs and allies. That please, for a caregiver, be very sure when you're handing them that diagnosis, if they're ready for it. If that family is ready to hear that diagnosis. It's almost like how you decide in every other disease while handing the diagnosis to the person. I mean, like cancer specialists will tell you that they take a lot of precautions while talking to a family and figured out whether that family is ready to hear or not.
Yeah.
Similarly, when you are handing somebody a diagnosis for their child, and a diagnosis that comes for life, you need to ensure that that family is ready for it. And I think if she would have told me, we see development delays, why don't you take him to a doctor? I would have been in a better space. Because it was handed out so directly to me, perhaps I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So that's how the journey began. The first year was completely in denial. And then eventually when the final diagnosis came, and this again came from the school that Madhav was in, I mean, it was a whole roller coaster of going through the grief cycle that I write about in my book. And whereas every caregiver goes through it.
Mugdha, did you and Gaurav sort of need to reparent yourselves? Because I feel that in a way, a lot of parents need to do that sometimes. When, I mean, not even parents to special needs. I mean, when I had my daughter, I needed to reparent myself, which taught me actually a lot of patience because I had to view life through the lens of a child, not through my own lens. So did you and Gaurav in any way need to reparent yourselves or how did your relationship go at that time?
It's interesting you ask that because we had no experience of handling a child because Madhav was our firstborn. So if you actually ask me if I had to learn parenting in a different way, perhaps this is the only parenting I know.
Yeah.
The joke around in the special needs circle is that a lot of moms who have 2 children, they always say that I know mere ek bacche ko autism hai, dusre ko kya hai, I don't know, because they are as complicated and as demanding as ever. But I think one of the things that was very important was to first understand what was happening. What is autism?
Yeah.
What is the autism spectrum? And I think I finally, when I met my first doctor who was a child psychiatrist, and when we went to her, that's when I understood what an autism spectrum is.
Okay.
And at that point in time, I was shocked. I was grieving. I did not know what was happening with my child. And when I was looking at him, he was still the child I was seeing every single day before the diagnosis came. And suddenly, with the diagnosis, this very child of mine had a label now and was looking different.
Yeah.
And I think that took a lot of time.
Okay.
And that is what we say. We will have to, at some point in time, start to look at our child beyond his labels. He is not just his label.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped us because the doctor said, treat him like any other child. But you will have difficulties. He will take longer time to learn things. He will have these sensory specific meltdowns or adjustments, and you will get used to it. So I think we learned on the go, but it was, yes, a different type of parenting. It's just that nobody tells you what to expect when you're expecting a child with special needs.
Yeah.
But you learn on the way.
I know of another case where a couple's child was autistic, and their parents, their in-laws and their parents were forcing them to have another child. And that happens a lot. I have also heard of these stories that chalo koi baat nahi, ek bachcha aise hai to ek aur kar lo. Did you in any way were you put in that sort of a situation by your extended family?
Oh, of course. From the point of view of the world around us, my mom is an IVF specialist. She is a doctor herself.
Okay.
So she actually went ahead to ensure that we did our genetic testing, whether we had genetic predisposition, because she was perhaps feeling that I should have a shot at regular parenting. And a lot of times people say that you should have a regular child to feel what regular parenting is all about. But I think Gaurav, in that case, extremely, he was adamant. He just did not want to take that chance. And I'm very thankful for that because, otherwise, if I were convinced, I would have convinced him. But in this case, he had convinced me.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it came at the right time because now, having worked in the field for such a long time, I do know the genetic predisposition is very strong.
Okay.
So number one, I always tell parents that if you've had one child with a neuro disorder, get your family checked, do your own checks, find out what are the chances, because now I'm meeting multiple parents who have two children.
I'm sure, yeah.
Who have two children with neuro disorders or neuro differences.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart because parenting is even more challenging.
Yeah.
And I don't know, having now lived this life and interacting with so many parents, if I would have had a neurotypical child and if I would have been a better parent to that child, because I often see the neurotypical sibling lose their innocence and their childhood while while the house is bringing up a child with special needs.
Yeah.
You put burden of blood on them. You put burden of care on them. And a lot of them perhaps are never prepared for that kind of caregiving role.
I also feel that, when they grow up, that resentment sets in. That I did not get that attention. I did not get that attention from my parents because they were always focused on the special needs child. And mujhe ye nahi mila, mujhe wo nahi mila. And that's why I have. So that resentment in a child is, I just feel that it is, it's just
No,
terrible.
Neha,
I mean,
it's amazing. It's amazing because I see very few parents who are having a second child because
Yeah.
they want to experience parenthood in a different way. A lot of them are only having the second child so that the second child can be a support for the first child.
Okay. Okay.
So unfortunately, you are already, before the child is born, putting the
Yeah.
burden of blood on the child.
Yes,
You know,
yes, yes,
it's
yes.
going to be your responsibility.
yeah.
And even if you are aware that you have to be a better parent to your second child as well, it is a very tight role. I don't know of any sibling who hasn't been through the ups and downs of being the other child in the family, where they haven't already been through that cycle. So
Yeah.
at some point in time, while they are the biggest support to their siblings and the biggest allies to their siblings, but there is a 50-50 chance of things going wrong.
True. True.
And so it's a delicate balance to strike even as a parent. And I wasn't sure that, I had the mental agency to take care of my child, to take care of myself, and then to take care of, for example, at this point in time, bringing a pet home is also such a decision to take because I'm like, will I be able to take care of another life? Will I be able to commit to what it means to keep another life at home? So all of those things, even when I'm looking at a non-human family member, is so complicated that having a second child was like impossible, I think.
Are you planning to get a pet home? Like, is Madhav asking you to get a pet home?
I don't know. So they do pet therapy at school.
Okay. Okay.
And so I'm warming up to it from the point of view that I will bring a pet only if Madhav shows enough and more interest.
Mhm.
And for that, I think we may have to foster one, or he needs to spend time. It's very important what breed you are getting.
Yeah.
I remember having a chat with one of a pet therapist, and very few people in India really spend a lot of time reading about the breeds.
Yeah.
So there are a few breeds that
Yes.
can support in
True.
caregiving.
I agree.
There
I
are a
agree.
few breeds that are like, you don't want another ADHD bacha in the house, which is a
Yeah,
beagle.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
we were told very specifically that beagles are very difficult to train. So it's
Yeah.
like having another Madhav in the house. So we were
Yeah.
like, we will
Yes.
have to study, everything before we have a new member in the family.
I agree. I agree.
Mm.
Mukta, you were speaking about, Madhav's meltdowns and how you coped with all of that. Do you have, I'm sure now you have a strategy in place to cope with bad days. Tell me some of that.
From Madhav's point of view?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think the meltdowns vary from child to child, adult to adult. And I think what happens over a period of time is we get used to understanding the triggers.
Mm-hmm.
So I know for sure what are the triggers for Madhav and what causes a meltdown. For example, whether it is a neurotypical child or neurodiverse child, the young generations have not known what it means to be hungry. So they never understand the emotion of hunger because, when they are in your tummy, you are feeding yourself, you're taking care of them. When they come out, you are by the clock, you are feeding them. In schools now, they have people who are watching what they are eating when they're home. So, unfortunately, this generation does not understand what it means to be hungry or what bodily sensations are when you are hungry.
Yeah.
And in Madhav's case, we figured that when he is hungry, he is hangry.
Hangry. Okay.
Yeah. And
That's
so
like I think with most kids as well. My daughter is the same because when I ask her that, are you hungry? And she'll say, no, I'm not. But she's displaying all the symptoms of being severely hangry, like that, like the meltdowns and kicking her feet and throwing things here and there. So yeah. So, and at the same time, she's continuing to say that mujhe bhook nahi lagi, I'm not hungry,
Because they don't understand what it means.
They
to
don't
be
understand it.
from, it's an, I mean, why we are evolving in a place where we are looking at human emotions in a very different way. Our children are perhaps not feeling a lot of emotions that we felt.
True.
And being hungry and then subsequently being hangry are like two things that come together. So we figured that it was hunger. And because they are picky eaters, they're never sort of full. Is it a food allergy that is causing it? Is it a sensory overload which is causing it? In our children, when they are on the spectrum, they have their 5 senses either overwhelming or underwhelming.
Okay.
So they may find lights, bright lights, either very triggering or they're fine with it. But we will never know unless we start to monitor the triggers. And that's the reason why a behavior journal to maintain is very important. If you've had a meltdown, and a lot of times what will happen when you go to your pediatrician or when you go to somebody, they will tell you that what happened before the meltdown. And at that point in time, if you haven't made a note of it, you will not remember. And that's the reason why I always used to tell that if there are any behavior deficits or any behavior manifestations, please find out what was happening before and after. In a very funny way, the lunar calendar has effect on Madhav, and I know a couple of other kids that, around the full moon or around a no moon, Amavas jo hota hai, lunar calendar. And, I feel my energy is also affected by it.
Okay.
So I started to watch over that. But when you have a meltdown, it's one thing to do a postmortem of a meltdown. And there's another thing when the meltdown is happening. What do you do at that point in time? And I think you learn it the hard way, because the meltdown can happen in a public space where all eyes are on you and you are so embarrassed that you don't know what to do. And when it is happening at home, sometimes you feel, how do I make it better? Because my neighbors are hearing, or there are other people. So, one of the first few things with a meltdown was how to be thick-skinned, how to only at that point in time look at your safety and your child's safety, how to comfort your own child. And that's how, with Journey, meeting with the senior parents, you learned how to handle the meltdowns.
What you're saying is basically something that my dad used to say a lot when faced with tough situations. And I use my dad's, anecdotes and teachings in nearly all my podcasts, because his life is the reason why I started the Lifesaver Show.
Wonderful.
And it's like you wrote this book, and I want to share this again. It says, I see you and I get you. It's a fabulous, this is Mugdha's journey, of raising Madhav. And it's so beautiful because it has it has self-care, it has things to do, notes to make, you can do all of that. Coming back to my dad's journey, the reason why I started this podcast was essentially because of him. And he used to say, accept situations and just accept it and just move on, and just accept it. Like if you have any sort of situation, instead of fighting it or whatever, just accept it. It's been given to you, and move on. Mugdha, I want to talk about fact checking and making yourself aware of the prognosis. Tell me, what exactly did you do? How did you go about going down that rabbit hole?
I think, Neha, it really helped me that I had journalism as my background, because, that sort of pushes you to read and to research. Also, I put every inch of my network to meaningful use, reached out to doctors, reached out to therapists. And I started to absorb and just read a lot about autism and make myself aware.
Okay.
I did overdo as well, because, I also reached a place where I had a autism breakdown, because, I was perhaps reading so much, which was not related to my child, that I was also psyching myself out. So while I tell people that awareness is essential, But if you are somebody who cannot handle that kind of information, then perhaps the book that I have written, or abridged version of certain books, or speak to your therapist. The second thing was that, while I was doing my research, I was also trying to tell myself that where are these autistic adults? Where are these autistic teenagers? And I need to find more about them, because that will help me in understanding what is the prognosis like. Because the therapists will be able to tell you the classic way in which the child is likely to grow. But day to day or year to year growth, which you can see with your neurotypicals, is perhaps something that you may not be able to see. So, for example, my child was potty trained very late, and he was trained perhaps at six and a half. And that would drive us nuts, because, we were always thinking that, what does this mean in the long run? Will he ever be independent? Will he ever be able to do things on his own when he is alone and when he is staying by himself? And lo and behold, he has already been on his overnight trips. We leave him with friends and family, so it's
How
almost like,
amazing. Yeah.
yes, it's almost like, you just need to be prepared for
Yeah.
perhaps what you're reading as what can happen in the future, but you have to keep thinking positive. And also, I think in India, we do not have health therapists or health
Hmm.
counselors.
Uh-huh.
This is a vertical of psychology and counseling that I think needs to be developed, because unfortunately, there are so many lifestyle diseases that people are encountering. There are so many caregiving responsibilities that, are coming on young adults and adults, that you need to go to a counselor who can tell you that if this is something that is not getting fixed, and if this is something that needs to be managed or you're going to live with, this is what your life looks like. Because then you get a picture of how much of your life are you going to put at stake.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a typical caregiving, what happens is that a person either gets fixed
Hmm.
or the person passes on.
Hmm.
But say if you're living with something, for example, I have seen people live with Parkinson's for a long time. There are people who are living with dementia for a long time. There are people who are living with old age related complications, but they are living for a long time.
Hmm.
And at that point in time, you have to understand the journey that is going to be. So, for example, if you know that you have a child with special needs,
Yeah.
it is not getting fixed.
Yeah.
You're going to manage it. So it cannot be कि अगर मैंने अगले 10 साल अपने बच्चे के लिए लगा दिया, अपना सब कुछ होल्ड पे कर दिया, अब मैंने अपनी नौकरी छोड़ दी, and I don't want to do anything, but I want to do this. It's not that after 10 years, you will have a neurotypical. So even these counselors help you set your expectations right. And I think that for a caregiver is very important, that you go to a counselor yourself or a family therapist and understand what you're dealing with.
I just feel, Nuga, with the state of healthcare in India, all these things that you've mentioned, when you find out anybody who's, I believe anybody can be special needs, not just an autistic child. You can have aging parents who have various health complications and they fall into the bracket of special needs. My dad had a stroke and he had a bypass heart surgery. And after his stint at the hospital, we were left to figure it out on our own. We were not told कि आपको फिजियो भी लेना है, आपको इनका ये भी कराना है, वो भी कराना है. And my mom, she had a few, boys to help her at home with dad, but largely she was doing everything herself, and it broke her. It broke her not only physically, it broke her emotionally. And I saw that. Like I saw what she went through because everything had to be administered on time. His medication, his food. There was an IV drip that was attached to him constantly. The flow of fluids needed to go. And above all of that, his physiotherapy, he needed to walk. He needed assisted, walking and all of that. Everything we were supposed to figure out on our own. I'm going to cut to a friend of mine in Australia had the same, something on similar lines, and everything, his rehab, his post hospital care was provided for by the hospital, and by the government. I mean, he didn't have to do anything. And in fact, he had to make it a point to see his therapist. He had to make it a point to see his doctor. And he recovered much faster. Here we were just left to, just go figure on your own. So do you think that there's a difference between, because you speak about this in your book as well, in the state of healthcare abroad, what they have to offer and what we have over here when it comes to special needs?
There's a huge deficit. And the deficit is because we are way too many and we have never been counted.
Yeah.
So when I speak about special needs, there hasn't been a census that has actually counted how many autistic individuals or neurodiverse people are there in the country. So when we don't know what the data is, we are never able to make policies. Having said that, when we talk specifically about caregiving and whether it is caregiving of a child or an adult or caregiving of any kind, I think what happens is that your main doctor never has the time. And which is the reason why I always ask parents and I always ask caregivers that, say you have someone who's recovering, do not go back to the main doctor for all your questions to be answered. Find a doctor that is recommended by them or a younger doctor who can tell you exactly what now needs to be done. Because a lot of times your main specialist will never have time for the extra questions that come post the operative time or post hospital, or in diagnosis case, say how to handle a meltdown, how to go to a therapy center, how to find things from other therapists or other holistic interventionalists. So that is the reason why I feel in India we need a community of people that understands what this family has gone through. I have gone through. Can we help each other? If I were to depend on government support, I mean, how many hospice do you see in India? Or how many places do you see in India where people with terminally ill people are getting a respectful last few days? Or for that matter, when you have someone recover from a heart ailment, there is a full post-surgery schedule that needs to be maintained.
Yes.
They need to have certain kinds of food. There has to be, even if there is a holistic intervention, until and unless you are part of a community, unfortunately, the doctors and the hospitals don't have time for it. We also do not have a lot of specialists who can help the caregiver. And because the caregiver is not suffering, it is assumed that the caregiver is fine with doing it.
Absolutely fine,
In fact, Neha, specifically, when we talk about your dad and mom, and I speak about my late dad as well and my mom as well, and with our parents, what we see is that it's unfair because, when you are growing, when you are making the mega bucks and when you're trying hard and, you park so many things for later in life. जब retire होंगे तब ये करेंगे. जब बच्चे बड़े हो जाएंगे तब हम ये करेंगे. And unfortunately, at that point in time, if one of the partners is unwell or has to be taken care of, the other partner starts to feel suddenly so much trauma of a life they are not going to ever live with that they had imagined.
I agree. My God, how much do I resonate with that? Because I've seen that with my mom. And it's just a life lived full of regrets. कि हमने ये भी नहीं किया, हमने वो भी नहीं किया. So as soon as my dad passed on, and I could see that resentment in her that now I'm too old and my body is not as agile and capable of doing so. Her mind is very willing. Like it's, she wants to go places, she wants to travel, but the body is not being able to cope up with that, So I have, and you're very right, because I have also told her that every single penny now should be spent on her health and on doing what she loves to do. Why would you park all of that away and not use it on yourself? It's very strange because I don't want her to live a life of resentment, of regret. I mean, regret makes people very bitter. I think it makes people very bitter. And
and guilt.
yes,
Oh
and
my
guilt.
God. The
And guilt.
guilt of the survivor.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the guilt
Yeah.
that, my partner has moved on. How do I enjoy life?
Yeah. Yes.
In my
So,
case, it was like, oh my God, how can I make every single minute of parenting about a learning
yeah.
opportunity?
Yes. Yes.
And then if I would ask somebody to take care of mother and I would want to step out for coffee or
Yeah.
step out for work or step out for anything, I would feel so damn guilty that, why
Yeah.
am I
Mom guilt.
allowing myself
Mom
to do
guilt.
this? The mom
Yeah.
guilt.
The
Why am
mom
I
guilt.
allowing myself to do this?
Yeah.
Even taking help in this case is very, very difficult. And,
Yeah.
I've lived that with my parents-in-law. Like my late father-in-law was also, my late father-in-law had several medical complications, but my mother-in-law would never raise it with either of her children and would try to do everything on her own. Because, the parent, and I'm sure your mother would have shielded both you and Angad because of this, that, no, we will manage.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, they want to take it all by themselves.
Yeah.
कि नहीं हम कर लेंगे, हम उनकी life को क्यों affect करें?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that guilt, that, you will not take help. And if you're taking help, you feel guilty that, somebody else is doing my duty. So all of those factors, when they come together, I think, these are the mental blocks that I have spent so many of my last few years of advocacy with caregivers to tell
Yeah.
them that you deserve a life of your own.
You do, yeah. And my mom, she's just lost that. I think that identity. She's in a sort of an identity thing right now, where because my dad was such a like a big public figure, and my mom was sort of, that shadow was there, and now that he's not there anymore, she's wondering, how do I start living my life now? Like, how do I do it? Like, I don't know how to do it. And I keep telling her that you need to start doing it for yourself now. I don't want you telling me, 5-7 years down the line that I didn't do this and I didn't do that. And I said, just whatever you want to do, just go ahead and do it. It's never too late to start living for yourself.
Absolutely.
And self-care, even if it means going to the salon or going to, just going for a lunch or coffee with friends. I said, just go ahead and do it. Don't think twice about it. Just go ahead and do it.
I think one of the questions that I make all my parents when I am meeting with them, or we are doing a workshop, or, in my social media interactions also, I always tell them, journaling has really helped me. So I always tell them that, journal, in the sense that, take out time. You don't have to do it every day, but once in a while, if you can, just sit with a paper and pen and just answer the question that what would your uninterrupted self look like? If you had a life with no hurdles, no speed breakers, at this point in time, what would you be? Or what would you imagine your life to be? When I start writing that, a lot of times they have forgotten कि हम क्या हो सकते थे या हम क्या कर सकते थे. But when they start doing that activity, then I tell them कि इस activity में से आप कितना जो है वो आप achieve कर सकते हो. And then start doing things small, in small doses. But you have to understand that a lot of times, either, and I see this in special needs families, that either the women become martyrs or they become superheroes. And neither of the badges don't do shit for us.
No, they don't.
They
don't.
Because,
I keep telling her, आपको कोई medal नहीं दे रहा है. Overwork करने के लिए आपको कोई मतलब nobody is recognizing you or anything. ये कोई नहीं, कुछ नहीं, कोई recognition नहीं मिलेगी आपको. So मतलब why are you doing this? And I tell you what, it's we've been conditioned. So her mom was like that. My mom's mom, my nanny was like that. I have seen my grandmother, my dad's mom also behave like that. So I think it's a conditioning which I am now very happy to say on my podcast that it ends with me. This is where it ends, and I'm not going to have my daughter do the same thing. I'm not going to have actually myself do the same thing as well, because it makes no sense. It absolutely makes no sense.
Yeah. So, like I had heard, and patriarchy is something that is a double-edged sword, which when hitting the women also hits the men. So
Yes.
in caregiving narrative, if you actually look at patriarchy, it either tells the man to be the provider, or it either tells the woman to be the nurturer.
Hmm.
And in both cases, caregiving cannot be balanced, because
Yeah.
if one of the parent is always spending the time with child, they reach
Yeah.
a state of exhaustion. At the
Yeah.
same time, if the entire financial burden is on one parent, on the man of the house,
Hmm.
imagine the kind of pressure they are dealing with.
Hmm.
So, it's when I speak to the cohorts, I always tell them that it is not a luxury that you're spending your time home with your child. It's a necessity now. The luxury is if it is equal caregiving and equal sharing of the financial burden. Because a
Yeah.
lot of women who have had successful careers, and by successful careers, I don't mean monetarily successful. I mean fulfilling careers.
Fulfilling careers. Yes.
Right? If you've had a fulfilling career, if you've had a life outside of your house, whether it is as somebody pursuing a hobby or working for somebody, it may not have always meant a monetary return. But a lot of times people ask, अगर तुम इतना ही कमा रही हो तो तुम इससे अच्छा है घर पे बैठ के बच्चे
घर
को
पे
पालो।
बैठो. Yes.
But that is not why you need to work or not work. It is important that this relationship also gets a balance. That you have to have a balance of, and so I always say, and I heard it from somebody who was deeply rooted in patriarchy, and when he got out of the family that he was born in, he said that I may be born in patriarchy, but it will be a disservice if I die in patriarchy. So it has to change.
Yes.
We can't change our past,
Yeah.
but we can change the present and the future. So,
Yeah.
that's why I always say that caregivers both need to, if there are two
Yeah.
in case of parenting, then both of them need to share equally the financial burden and the emotional part of caregiving.
I agree. Thank you so much, Mugdha. And I want a lot of, I believe a lot of, when we talk about caregiving, essentially, whenever you say that somebody is a caregiver, there are a lot of times women come to your mind because they are nurturers. But men can also handle that role equally, and they do a fantastic job of it. And like the women watching this podcast, I want them to know that prioritizing self-care is a must. Your needs, whatever you need to do, whatever you want to do, you should be able to do it without that guilt that Mugdha spoke about, that mom guilt that comes along with it. Thank you so much.
I'll just add one thing here, which
Haji.
is that as a caregiver, one of the things that haunts you the most is what after me?
Yeah.
Or what if I'm not around?
Yes.
And with that thought in your mind, it becomes all the more necessary that you take good care of yourself to live long. So in a lot of cases, living long is not a luxury, it's a necessity, because you want to be around your family. You want to empower them, enable them, and ensure that they are taken care of. And that's the reason why I say that for people who are caregivers of any kind, until and unless you take care of yourself, you will become a patient yourself.
Agreed. And
So
then
that
you'll
is
need caregiving yourself. Yeah.
Very important to physically, emotionally, and financially take care of yourself. So future planning, health planning, your mental health and mindfulness planning, all needs to be done together and prioritized.
Thank you so much, Mugdha. I love the conversation that we've had. Thank you. Thanks for being part of the Lifesaver Show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks so much for watching this conversation with Mugdha. I hope you can take some important, in fact, takeaways from this conversation are how not to lose yourself while taking care of someone else. It's very important to be always self-aware and not lose yourself completely. Keep these things in mind in case you are looking after anyone with special needs. That could mean, your elderly parents or kids or anyone in the family. Thanks so much for watching.